So we're in the buckwheat again, just doing an update. It's been 4 weeks since we did the first planting. This row here is one of the ones that we had to reseed after we run out of the seed. So what we've got here is 4 rows of reseeded buckwheat that's 3 weeks old, and one single row down here that is 4 weeks old, and we can see that the 4-week old stuff is well into flower. The 3-week buckwheat has some flower buds showing, but nothing is out yet. And you can also see that we have enough room that we could plant both ways with the small Planet Junior seeder and end up with, I think, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows of seeding that keeps it inside the wheel tracks, so that we can still drive over the rows with tractors to do some work without upsetting the buckwheat cover crop. If we have a look down one of the better rows that is all 4-week aged stuff, you can see it's a fairly good solid stand and is starting to close out the row. But I think this planting is just going to be basically, it's just not dense enough for good weed control. So this was with the Planet Junior with the seeding discs number 26, which was the biggest seeding disc I had. 4 rows at that seeding rate just isn't going to be good enough for weed suppression. But what I'm hoping for is to get a good stand of buckwheat established, and hopefully it will set seed. Seed will drop on the ground. Buckwheat in this area is not going to be a weed problem for me, and we might be able to get it to establish and reseed itself during the year. So the only time I wouldn't want buckwheat here is those couple of weeks in August, September, when the apricot trees are in flower and the blossom is a competition for pollinating the apricot trees. This is a row, it's a funny shaped row where we had to seed twice because the row was so wide. Down one side, come back on the other. So when we get down to the front of the row, it was seeded in both directions. And so there's 8 rows here instead of the 4. And this probably would give you some shading out and some weed suppression as the buckwheat grew. So I think it definitely is trying to double sow it would be the way to go. And if we can get 8 rows, most likely 7 rows, and offset it enough that the second run isn't just digging up the first run, that's what I'm going to try for next time. The buckwheat will be in for, we can still work the vines, we can still prune, everything is hand done in here. So this will basically stay here. The frost will most likely kill it off, and that could be anywhere between 4 and 8 weeks away. So I think we'll generate some mature seed by then. We'll prune. The prunings will be pulled into the middle of the row. We'll work those up with a slasher and take the opportunity to reform the soil beds under the rows, and then cultivate a new seed bed and sow our spring summer cover crop, which will be a selection of seeds. I haven't chosen it yet. Something to deal with some soil compaction, something like some radish, maybe some chicory, something like that. We'll set down some tap roots, and also we'll start laying in some nitrogen fixing plants and try and get some soil nitrogen established into the ground, and also some leafy bulk material so that we can get some organic carbon back into the ground as well. So, and then that will get us through to harvest time. Harvest will probably end up destroying whatever is in the ground, just from the fact that we're backing through with tractors and equipment and stuff like that. And then after harvest, we'll have to have another look at what we're going to do, whether we can just regenerate the spring-summer cover crop. It'll still be too hot to go back into buckwheat. We could put in a short-term sort of bulk crop, something that has a lot of flowers and a lot of potential for the honeybees to work during the summer going into early autumn period, when this area is really lacking for nutrition for the beehives, and then back into buckwheat at the once the weather cools down a little bit and we're out of those high 30-40 degree days. So I can see us working three different sorts of cover crops in the year coming, but we'll just have to work out how to do that in an effective way that actually works on the farm. But the buckwheat's looking pretty good for 4 weeks, and I think we should have enough growing season that we will set a reasonable amount of seed.